Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. This is Meditate on This! Exclamation mark, episode 3. And it's the John and Doug show. I'm John Dupuy, and this is my dear friend and colleague, Douglas Prater. And today we're going to be talking about mastery, grit, and how to master your mind, and why that is so essential and important if you want to do anything that really matters. So, hi, Doug.
Hi, everybody.
So, well, would you like? Okay. So, Doug and I have discussed this issue a whole lot. Why? Because everything we do evolves around practice, integral practice. And the work that we do at iAwake is creating tools to facilitate interior practice and facilitate all kinds of practice, because it changes our brains in positive ways and helps us to focus and helps us to motivate and helps us to look inside. And this has just been an obsession with me. And when I start talking about it, my wife just rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh, not that again." So that's why we're back talking about it some more. Doug.
Yeah, well, you have to practice talking about practice. It's, I mean, it's one of those things that we have to do every day. So it's important to reinforce that mindset. It's real easy to get fired up, to get motivated to do something, to watch some inspirational video, right? Or see a performance on the Olympics, or watch a documentary about a spiritual teacher, whatever the case may be. Get real fired up, dive headfirst into your thing, and then that motivation fades. Motivation is not a reliable force to get us to do the hard work and face the daily grind to make any kind of transformation in our lives. So it's really important to find something else, something beyond fleeting motivation, and really cultivate that grittiness to stick through it when things get hard, and they will. Whether it's a meditation practice, or working out in the gym, challenging yourself, whether it is playing the guitar, learning an instrument, working on the piano, whether it is showing up with your family day after day, taking care of a child, things get hard, and finding something deep within you that allows you to push through that suffering and continue to show up and do it is the way to growth. And what we find is that we all have perceived limitations to ourselves that we're afraid to push past, that we think, oh, that's too much pain, I don't want to go any further, I can't face this, I can't do this. And those blocks, more often than not, are in our heads, and we can get through them if we learn how to face that, if we have the courage to face that, which is really what it takes to keep showing up in that situation.
Yeah, and once we understand the dynamics of practice, and practice is cultivation through gritty, courageous repetition, okay, and the capacity to be with okay, being a beginner and sucking. I mean, you don't want to play Guitar Hero where you get to act like you're a guitar hero, and everybody, you get all the fake stuff, and you really haven't done anything. They've learned how to push some buttons or something like that. It's a well, that's a danger. This whole thing of the gaming world. You're the master of the universe in a virtual game. Oh, that works well. Yeah, you mastered the game, but the game is like not really anything but a game. So how do you do that? And it's really important. And I don't think I was ever extremely gifted at anything, and I learned early on that I would have to really try hard if I were going to be able to compete with my peers. I started doing judo at a young age, and when I played football when I was in junior high, and I was like, God, a lot of my friends were just really superb athletes, and I wasn't. But I tried really hard, and worked at it, and I got to be pretty good. And at least I was respected by my coach and the teammates, which made me feel really good. And that's what I was doing. I remember one time we were wrestling the football team. We had the last PE class in junior high school. And I've been taking judo, but there are a lot of mat techniques. And I took on the whole football team. A lot of these guys were a lot bigger than me and everything. And I beat everybody in a wrestling thing. And everybody thought I was kind of this little hippie weirdo. I kind of had this hard time with straddling kind of the hippie world, the groups that were rebelling and listening to, the music of the late 60s and psychedelics and all. Then I was kind of a jock at the same time, and I was trying to find who I was. And I was able to do that because I'd worked at judo, and everybody's very impressed. I didn't say anything about judo. Hey, there it is. So I learned that lesson early on, and then over the course of my professional career and dealing with addicts and running and starting and working in therapeutic wilderness programs, I was looking for a model recovery that I didn't find out there, and that great shout out and kudos to 12 Steps. Saved a lot of lives, but only works what 10% of the time for most people. So I was looking, saying, how can we do better than that? Then I discovered Ken Wilber's work, the integral thing, and especially his idea of integral practice. And then I started engaging in that myself, and it completely revolutionized my life. Really got it, that I had to work my body, I had to work my mind, I had to work, do my emotional shadow work, healing all my PTSD and all my, old ideas and resentments and whatever were holding me back. And then to have a true spiritual practice. And I'm kind of a dumb luck mystic. And I've had quite a few mystical experiences in my life, but they were either just happened spontaneously. The first time when I was like 11 years old, I was reading the New Testament, the Sermon on the Mount. I said, God is everything. God is love. And wow, it was real. And that lasted, the glow lasted for several months. Meantime, I was converting all my friends. And I've gone back and they're still Christians after all these years. So I don't know to be proud of that. Or anyway, it sucks. But that was my first unbidden mystical experience. And I didn't have any really eldering to help me stay on the path. So that was complicated. And then later on, I've had a bunch more, whether vision questing or taking, psychedelic, especially mushrooms in the wilderness by myself, and had that. So I know from experience what these things were. But as in Ken Wilber's, there's states, there's these temporary mind-blowing state experiences that illuminate the universe, but then the light fades and you're back where you were. And then there's stages that are permanent development. And I started kind of getting that and learned that what we're really going for is not just the illuminating states, which you can, do pretty regularly if you're willing to do the right thing, but we need stage growth so that we actually embody this knowledge that comes from these altered, mystical, spiritual peak states, call them what you will. And so that became the focus of my work. And I said, if we apply this to people that are struggling with addiction, they work on these main things. That recovery is a practice, your body, your mind, your emotional shadow, and your spiritual life. Boom, that's a foundation that is enough to cover the main bases. And then you can apply the same kind of discipline that you learn from that to any other skill that you choose.
And man, talk about grit, John, getting over addiction. Whew. That's talk about heavy setbacks that'll really mess you up. Addiction will knock you on your ass. And how do you develop the fortitude and the courage to keep going when things get that bad? Well, it's exactly what you're talking about, the showing up for daily practice, which can lead to these profound altered states of consciousness that catalyze that transformation. But what you were saying too is that it's not just about that state experience. That alone won't necessarily do much. It's how do we hold on to this and integrate it and make it a part of our lives. One of the guys that I really have learned a lot from and look up to in a lot of ways is Jamie Wheel, who wrote the book or co-wrote the book Stealing Fire, right? Been a big inspiration for my work and my life. And he has a fantastic talk where he themes on just that altered states to altered traits and really internalizing these things we learn. I think that's exactly what you're referring to here. And I know that Ken talks about that a lot as well, Ken Wilber, in his work. And it's such an important idea to keep showing up and keep transforming these things from just a peak experience into something we can stay with. And that kind of ties back into what I was talking about earlier with the motivation and feeling so inspired to go tackle something. That's an altered state, feeling all pumped up to go and hit the gym or pick up a guitar or whatever. But how do we turn that into a trait, into a core part of who we are? And
Yeah,
that's one of
well,
the
well,
most
keep in
important
mind
things. Yeah.
that states are kind of dumb luck, but stages are earned. You really got to work for those stages, and especially the ones that are getting to be pretty high. It's kind of easy to get to the stage that your culture it pretty much is at, the center of gravity where everybody is because of school systems and, your churches or your family, they're all kind of want you to stay there. But if you're going to start peeking your head above that and get in stages that aren't exactly really accepted, that just as in when Green started coming on, the postmodernism in the 60s, man, talk about a lot of feet and you push back. I was a long haired hippie kid in Texas in the late 60s and early 70s, and man, it was dangerous. People were out for you. So um, yeah, so it takes a lot of work. And then one of the things I like about Jamie Wheel that I saw in an interview of his, and I love the book too, by the way, uh, is why do we do that? Well, ultimately, it comes back to service. If you do all these practices, it's just a narcissistic thing, right? So you're great and you're sexy and you're beautiful and all that stuff. Well, hey, it's okay to be beautiful and sexy and blah 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 blah, but that's not why we're doing it. Ultimately, there's a deep moral, ethical, spiritual imperative that if we are gonna not just especially if you're a sensitive person, as I know that you are, Doug, and so am I, if you don't do the work to become the person that you need to be, you just get filled with despair. The pain of the world is too fucking much, and it just crushes us. So either we off ourselves or we do drugs or do whatever to escape. Just the pain of being alive. So and I'm a depressive. I've really struggled with depression. I know you have too,
Yeah.
Doug. And the way that I've found to redeem that is through practice and remember why I'm doing the practice and pull my head out of my ass and get busy doing the stuff I'm supposed to be doing. And karma yoga, the yoga of service, is a wonderful thing. It really helps us realize, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and it redeems life and shows you the meaning of your life.
It's so huge and so important to find that deeper why, and it can be a really difficult thing to do, and will undoubtedly change over time too as your life unfolds and you reach different stages as different things happen. But that's exactly what it takes to get through getting knocked on your ass and trying to get back up again, is having a reason that is bigger than yourself to push through and do it. Why am I facing this challenge every day? Why am I pushing through this suffering? Why am I enduring this? And understanding that mission to the best of your ability in a moment is the thing that's going to push you through. We were talking earlier, John, and I talked a little bit in our last show about David Goggins and his book that I just finished. Just an incredible person and his ability to be resilient.
What's the name of the book, Doug, by the way?
The book is called Can't Hurt Me. And his life story is just incredible. Some of the things he overcome and some of the things that he pushed himself to do. And throughout the book, his motivation, his reason, his deeper why for learning what he was capable of and overcoming some of this suffering again and again and again through, multiple iterations of BUDS, the Navy SEAL training program. And, he also did Delta Force selection and just this whole litany of things, running ultra marathons and breaking the record for pull-ups. His motivation changed, but ones that I remember are he was trying to earn support for a cause, draw attention to a cause, trying to help wounded veterans, for example, was enough for him to endure a thing so that he might help relieve the suffering of others. And when you have something like that backing you up, you can push yourself through the things that might otherwise keep you down or pull you out. And I certainly have found that to be the case in my own life as well. The way he put it was just so poignant and so beautiful. And it's exactly what you're suggesting here too, through karma yoga and the service. It's getting outside of ourselves, which is in itself a it's an increase in level. It's a different way of looking at the world. It's a movement to a whole other stage and way of being, which is why the practices are so important in the first place. And that's how it continues to grow and blossom and spiral outward.
Yeah, yeah, and I just listen. I haven't read the book, but I listened to. I'm almost finished with it, but listening to an extended conversation with him and Rogan on what's Rogan's first name?
Oh, Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, right,
Yeah.
right. Really like his podcast, and I mean, it depends on who he's got, but I like him. I like where he comes from, just about all of the time, and it was amazing. Coggins is a he's a black guy and had a horrible abusive father, and I mean, just went learning disabilities and just had so much stuff and just overcome, and there's just this take no prisoners, no excuses attitude. It's like just don't be a wimp, and it's like and grit. Grit is like a muscle. Stick to itiveness, the courage to practice, the courage to transform, the courage to push yourself beyond yourself is I believe is something that can be might be a small little motivation, but if you just start doing it, and you may have to get a personal trainer, or you may have to get a meditation teacher, or you may have to use iAwake stuff. I don't think iAwake makes the journey any easier. Maybe it makes it easier, certainly makes it quicker, but you still have to do the work. Mm-hmm. And just this attitude and the things he's been able to do, like these 100-mile races. He was in a race where they ran around a track for 100 miles. That's like 400 laps, I think. Can you imagine running 400 laps around a football field? Just insane.
Just unbelievable.
And it's like saying, don't leave anything on the table. So when you want to start making these things realize, it's like I picked up a couple of things in the last decade. I've actually been playing tennis for a long time, but I've started really trying to get better at it. And I realized that not only do I have to play, I play with Pam, we play very good. We play very competitively, but it's not enough just to play tennis because you have to practice, because you can't practice your new things while you're playing the game because they're new. And it's just like you don't practice your new riffs or whatever when you're playing in front of people because you don't know it yet.
Yep.
So not only have to play, but you have to practice and practice and practice. And I really learned great advances in my guitar playing just by sticking to it and having guitars next to my workplace. And every moment that I'm not working or something, I'm practicing. I'm doing scales. I'm learning riffs. On YouTube, oh my God, YouTube, it's got so many great lessons, so many great teachers that you just absorb. So,
and you're doing things, John, that are right at that edge of being just a little bit too hard. And it sucks when you learn a new riff and you can't play it yet. My fingers don't work that way. I can't quite get that stretch. I can't do this thing yet. It's really, really frustrating. And there can be a lot of fear there and self-doubt and, oh man, I'm not good enough to get this. I'll never get this. And so you keep showing up and you keep facing that. And courage is, like everything else that we're talking about, a habit that when you keep showing up and you keep doing those hard things, even when you fail and you get back up and you try again and again and again, that's something that eventually becomes part of your identity too, having the courage to do that. Because if something is too hard, right, and you bail out and you quit, then you learn about yourself that, oh, I'm a person who quits when things get too hard. And turning that around and building a new habit, forming new neurological connections, new memories of, yeah, last time this thing was hard and I kept going anyway. Last time this thing was hard, I did it again and again and again. Eventually that becomes an integral part of who you are so that you can push yourself and move through the things that you thought were your blocks and your boundaries just by continuing to show up and teach yourself that, yeah, I can do it. Or even if I don't make it this time, I'm the person who's not going to quit. I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to keep trying. And, whether we're trying to overcome an addiction, as I have some certainly experience with and almost got to that point of giving up too, I things got pretty black there. And I kept showing up and kept giving this sobriety thing one more try until eventually we had it. But it took 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years, 21 years, 22 years, 23 years, 24 years, 25 years, 26 years, 27 years, 28 years, 29 years, 30 years, 31 years, 32 years, 33 years, 34 years, 35 years, 36 years, 37 years, 38 years, 39 years, 40 years, 41 years, 42 years, 43 years, 44 years, 45 years, 46 years, 47 years, 48 years, 49 years, 50 years, 51 years, 52 years, 53 years, 54 years, 55 years, 56 years, 57 years, 58 years, 59 years, 60 years, 61 years, 62 years, 63 years, 64 continual showing up to get there. And that's what it takes for other big problems that people are facing in their personal lives, the big challenges we face as a culture and as a society. We're facing things that seem just insurmountable right now. And how do we even make a dent in any of that, not get overwhelmed and fall into that bleak pit of sadness and overwhelm and stop trying? Well, we just keep showing up and doing things that are too hard and maybe failing and then trying again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a nice thing about working with iAwake, because you know that even if you're down in some place in the world, there's somebody listening to our stuff that's making great progress and healing and having a wonderful experience. So that's all kind of karmic money in the bank, so to speak. That bills. And yeah, and if I mean, well, what are the tricks? Well, first you got to get sick of where you're at. Like you were doing drugs and alcohol and everything. It's like, I can't do this shit anymore. So you have to have that final just come to Jesus moment where I'm going to do this. And and you need to surround yourself with people who are going to support you, that are like-minded. And for me, that's really hard because I'm kind of a lone wolf introvert, So, I mean, I've never had a personal trainer at all as far as strength training. But in the early days when I was beginning to work out in the 80s, I think the late 80s, I really started getting in there. You go to the gym and you just ask people, hey, what is that exercise you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Da, da, da. And people, and of course, I'm still always watch and see if I see a new routine or something that I can add on to mine. But back then, it seemed to be, I don't know, maybe there weren't that many people strength training, and everybody was always. I never found anybody that was not willing to tell me what they were doing and what the principles were,
right,
and stuff like that.
It can be easy for people at the very beginning of their fitness journey to be intimidated by the gym, and the people at the gym think that, they're going to judge me and they're going to say who knows what kind of mean things. But in my experience, gym goers and weightlifters can be some of the friendliest people out there. They're always willing to share what they know and to help. Perhaps always is an overgeneralization, but more often than not, I have found that people are willing to help you if you ask.
Yeah, and so you don't hang around with people who are just bless their hearts, who just want to eat Cheetos and Twinkies and watch television on the couch. If you want to become physically really strong and really vital, it's just like if you want to get sober, you can't hang out with your old using buddies. You need to find new sanghas or new groups of people, support groups, online, in person, whatever. And inspire yourself with information and testimonials, and compare yourself to the great ones. Like when I want to compare my guitar playing, I'm pretty good, but I compare myself to the real masters, and I'm inspired. That the way they did it. I mean, in any field of endeavor, the way that you achieve greatness is just simply doing it. Now, I was listening to the podcast with Joe Rogan and David Coggins, I believe. David, right?
Yeah, and it's Goggins with a G.
Goggins.
Yeah, just for people Googling.
Right. And they were talking about, well, if you work out 5 hours a day, you're pretty chill. You get into this zone. He's talking about with his wife. She said, "Can we go do this?" Sure, sweetheart. And they were talking, well, it's like, well, I don't know if meditation does the same thing. And they didn't quite seem to get meditation because that's not their big deal. But meditation is also something that's really fucking difficult.
Yep.
Try not to think for a while and see how that works. It's like, it's almost impossible. That with time and practice, you can actually learn how to still the mind. But the practice of don't think. It's just so self-defeating, and it's agonizing.
And the thing is, your attention wanders, and talk about a way to build grit, right? You bring it back and you bring it back and you bring it back, and your mind does wander, and it's going to wander, and it's going to keep wandering. And no matter how long you've been practicing, your mind is still going to wander. And the meditation, the practice itself, is not necessarily even in the attempting to keep a still mind. It's in the bringing it back. It's in the recognizing that, yeah, it's going to stray, it's going to wander, and that's okay, because I'm going to keep coming back to it. I'm going to keep coming back to this focal point.
I do get to these points after years of practice where thinking is optional. Have you had that experience where I can think if I want to, but I don't have to? That's pretty cool. And it does get easier. And I just one of the things I like about Coggins is that he talked about his two heart surgeries. It's really fucked up. He almost died, and then he just kept on. And of course, I had this massive heart attack last March,
Yeah.
so it'll be March 7th. It'll be a year, and I almost died. I had an artery completely collapse, and I was miraculously close to a cardio center in Cortez, Colorado, St. Mary's. Thank you. And they saved my life. And I was, God, I don't know if you've ever had a massive heart attack, but in my experience, well, the first 5 hours is a state of grace. It's really strange. But after that, I was just so exhausted. And it was like, I wanted to get the hell out of the hospital. And you have to walk around. So I was about to fall on my face, but I was faking it, acting like it was much easier than it was. Because, geez, let me die at home. I don't want to be here. And we got out. But about a week and a half after the heart attack, I was back in the gym and I was back in the tennis court, and I mean, at first, I could, Pam and I would kind of hit the ball back and forth for 5 or 10 minutes. We weren't playing games and I'd be exhausted, my heart would be going through and I'm feeling all this weird shit. And I'd be, doing some kind of strength training and feeling the heart do this strange stuff. And it's like, scary. But it was like, you know, 30 years, if not more, of practice. It's just like, hey, I'm not going to die sitting on the couch terrified, and luckily, I said to the doctor, oh, man, can I exercise? Oh, yeah, you need to exercise. I was like, thank you, Lord. And I found that, and I've experienced a lot of pain, but when I work out, it feels better. It goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So pushing myself and working really hard, playing tennis or doing cardio or strength training really makes me feel better. So that's been a real motivator too. But it wasn't something I had to, I had the heart attack and now I have to figure out how to adopt a life of exercise and, strengthen my heart. My heart was plenty strong. Some bitch was blocked and it just kept pumping the whole time. And I mean, my heart never
I
stopped. It
mean, that's
just couldn't
probably
get,
what saved your life, John.
yeah, yeah. So that's been, and that's where, you practice. So when the times when you really, really need it, it's there.
Right.
And the same thing with meditation. Super helped because there's a lot of depression associated with heart attack. I don't know why. I mean, some of the messages are, oh, you're permanently screwed up and you'll never be able to be your old self. And, your ticker could stop at any time, which is true for all of us. But it's a little more, it's more than just an idea when it's actually happened. And I've learned that if I'm going down that black hole, if I meditate for a couple of hours using the technology that we produce, it goes away, and that's an amazing gift. So yeah, so I already had things in place. I had to change some, do some other stuff and take all these supplements and blah 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 blah, and change my lifestyle somewhat. But it was, God, it's such a help
But
that I already
even
had.
the prospect of doing all that can feel so overwhelming to some people. Like, why am I going to try? Why am I going to get up and keep doing this and keep pushing and push myself so hard to keep exercising when it hurts? And, you just had a heart attack and going through the emotional distress related to that, which fortunately, since you've been meditating for so long, was less than it could have been, I would think. But I know you were still going through some pretty deep stuff there and doing the work. What motivates you and what inspires you, and how do you find that inner spark to keep going and doing the prospect of the monumental amount of work you have to do to refill yourself with spirit and drive and courage and mission to keep going?
Well, Coggins is just like, hey, is it a challenge? Fuck yeah, and he's like fallen on his face a lot of times, and he just takes that as a challenge. He's trained his mind to just push through difficulties, and I know that not I don't nearly to the degree that he's done it, but he's definitely an inspiration. And of course, when we, they're primarily talking about using physical exercise to strengthen your mind, to harden your mind, to create this just diamond that just can cut through the BS and get you to where you need to be. And of course, right. In kind of this integral model, you have to do that with other things too. It's like you're reading and you're learning and you're being this scholar that just learns essential information and wisdom to help you be a smarter, wiser, better person and do the internal work. And it takes the same kind of grit to do that emotional work, to do the shadow work, to do the spiritual work, and of course the kind of grittiness and the discipline and the courage that you can develop uh, exercising and working out again applies to all these other fields and other things you might be doing. You know, my big challenge right now is picking up and finishing this book that I was working on because I got thrown off course by a heart attack and my mother's death, and we're no longer in Utah. We're in Louisiana because we're here to help Pam's aging mother. We've been in the aging mother parent thing for a while, and Pam was pretty magnificent, my wife, when my parents were at that stage, and they both passed. And now it's my time to be here, support her. But anyway, all this stuff, and it helps. And what else helps? Having a spiritual connection where you and an interior practice where you can go inside and find solace,
Yeah.
in that quiet place where, uh, you know, using the G word, I'm comfortable with that. After It took me years to get comfortable with it because
Right.
I
Yep.
became very uncomfortable with it, and now it's like okay, I can say God again, but having that place where you know that if you have to, you can go find this peace, to quote the scripture that passes all understanding. It's just like there, but it takes a while. It takes a while of just slowing down and settling, and having this, I don't know, receptive attitude and just emptying your own stuff out, your own agenda, and just say, okay, here I am, and to sit in that place. And that's one of my meta practices is centering prayer, which is not easy. So where you just keep coming back to your spiritual center, your heart, and you're just saying, here I am. I'm open to whatever needs to happen. If nothing happens, it's just stillness. That's beautiful. If you get, my centering prayer is not exactly the traditional kind that's Father Keating and the others talking about. I think it's okay. A non-duality is a part of it. Just oneness with all happens in these deep practices. But there's also parts where you really work out your issues. Your emotional issues, and also your mental strategic shit that you need to be doing. Like this is what my life's about. Oh, I got to call Doug. Oh, we got to work on this and that and the other. And the place where you just get in touch with the voice of wisdom, kind of this deep soul centric level. And so all of that stuff is part of it. And eventually, at the bottom, you get down to this: there is no other. There is just the one, and that's an incredibly beautiful place. And you have to keep working on it. One of the things that Coggins and Company says is like, it's not, oh, man, I've achieved all this. I'm just a disciplined son of a bitch and blah, blah, blah. Every day he talks about every day he looks at his tennis shoes for a half hour. He's making a joke. It's like, I don't want to run today. And I was listening to that yesterday, last night, and this morning when I was on the treadmill. Not my favorite thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I like lifting weights. I love playing tennis and blah, blah, blah. It just takes stick to itiveness. And because of the heart thing, that's really good. So now instead of, putting cardio in second place, I put cardio in first place.
Yep.
And if I do my cardio, I give myself permission to do the fun stuff. So one of the tricks I've done is I listen. It becomes, sometimes I just train. In other words, I listen to the iAwake stuff. But a lot of times I'm listening to either audiobooks or really good podcasts or lectures and stuff like that. That just keeps me really inspired. And like your amigo David Coggins and Rogan, there's wonderful conversations. And Rogan's he's a mixed martial artist, jujitsu guy. Works out all the time. He knows he knows a lot about that discipline and just cut the bullshit, right? Stop making excuses.
Yep.
Just do it. Why? Because it's essential. And why live half a life and leave nothing? Well, one thing they kept saying is leave nothing on the table.
Yeah.
You know, that you can go so much beyond what you think you can. And when you push beyond your preset barriers in your own head, it's just a breakthrough, and it's exhilarating. You go, wow, you know, and if I can, you know, just come for this depressed, almost well, suicidal mess and actually be contributing in the world, then maybe there's, you know, hope for everybody. You
Yeah.
know, somebody screwed up as me can make progress. You know, and it's just amazing. It's just the best story in town. Oh, and I'm buying a house here in northern Louisiana because we just need our own space. Um, and but I found this house that's right across the street from the club that I work at. That has a great gym and great tennis courts, and it's kind of expensive, but you know, every time you use it, it gets less expensive.
Yep.
You know, if you're
Yep.
paying $100 a month for to have a card in your wallet, you know, what the hell good is that?
Right.
Not very, but you know, I can just, so I walk out and I see my gym. The first thing I see when I walk out is the gym and the tennis courts. It just reminds me to train, put these things, you know, right there. So it was, you know, spending all this money to, to be close to my place of practice is like, you know, shows you where my head's at.
Yeah. And that's the way that's the way it has to be too. I mean, it's more expensive in terms of, I think, life and spirit's real currency not to practice than.
Oh, hell yeah. 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 No, and I'm 62 years old now. So, um, I'm I feel different than most people my age, you know, because they just, I don't know, they're just, you know, they just kind of accept the quick deterioration of your body. And I don't know, it's something that's like, I mean, there's some people not like that. And you can see the older people, and I see older people who are maybe my age, and I feel so much younger than them. But you can see the people who work out,
Yeah.
you know, just that. And they're just so much healthier and happier. You know, they're just kind of radiant, you know, and the people that don't, it's just, they're just not happy. They're old and they look like they're getting ready to die, you know. Um, and when you know, where we live in Wayne County, I mean, in southern Utah, I mean, a lot of the people, it's a very rural Mormon district, and a lot of old cowboys and ranchers and sheep herders, and I mean, you know, agriculturalist farmers, and they've had these kind of rigorous lives where they do a lot of stuff, but they got these big old extended bellies, and you know, their bodies have deteriorated. It's like, just because you pull weeds in the garden, or you know, you throw hay bales every once in a while, or ride a horse, I mean, that's good, but it ain't enough.
Right.
You know, it's just, I see it over and over again. And then they get to a certain age, and then they go to the gym. They have a little very simple gym where we're at, and uh, even and whatever age you start, you know, it begins to, you know, that you can see they're beginning to have hope again.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting rejuvenated, and they're starting to get happier and more vital, and feeling the life force come back into them. So,
And just purely on a physical level, you are increasing the process of neurogenesis every time you exercise. You're growing new brain cells and making new connections and getting back into that place that makes you alive and vibrant and happy and youthful, even just physically, not to mention what it does for your spirit to feel that much more alive, and the contribution you can make to the people who you're close to the world at large, to even fulfilling the more selfish things that you wanted to do. You know, wanted to take a trip to wherever it was and never got to do that. Well, you're enlivened through exercise to find it in yourself to fill all those things and create meaning for not only yourself but everyone that you come into contact with through such a simple thing. It just ripples outward again and again.
yeah. You know, and when we first started communicating, Doug, you wrote me this, I don't know, 3-page email, you know, 1,500 words or more. And I read it. I went, oh my God, this guy's brilliant. I'll have to write a whole book just to answer all these questions. And so I said, let's talk on Skype or something. and we talked, and it was really clear that we both kind of adopted this practice,
Mm-hmm.
ethos, an integral practice. And then there was a lot of challenge that happened in your life where you weren't able to practice.
Right.
And being a good old depressive like me, that ain't good for you, bro. And me either, man. I practiced because I would die, literally.
Yep.
As I've learned how to live with the depression and also make the depression a blessing because it motivates me. And in those dark places is where I found so many breakthroughs in life. If you take them on consciously and just deal with it, which is like a hell of a thing to learn. That you're not trying to do away with depression, but you're inviting it and being present. And what are you here to teach me? And in those places that I found the greatest solace and greatest wisdom. So our grief and our pain are things that can be embraced, and it's really a hard lesson. And you have to start doing it every day.
Yep.
And then like when my dad died, it was horribly painful for me. I loved him so much, and the whole story around how he died and all that. But it took me a long time. In fact, it took my mother's death almost to somehow help me to heal from that more. And it's still I still miss him a lot, but there's just more gratitude now for having a father like that. And my mom is wherever she is. I hope she's with him now. But they were incredible love story into their 80s and 90s. It was so obvious they loved each other so much. They were inspiration to so many of us. And but I had to just deal with that and sit with the grief for a long time. And there was no Sedona method, ding, breathe.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts to that one.
It wasn't that way with me. To me, I just learned that just have to be there with it, be present, and say, "Hey, thank you, teacher," and be with it until whatever, until it happens. And part of me will always, there'll always be some grief, but like it's really changed now to much more to appreciation, and gratitude for them, for what they gave me. And read the introduction of my book, when I was in grad school, we had these 3 quarters of growth process, our small group that we went through the master's program with, and we deal with our shit,
Yep.
And I was like, hey, my parents were pretty damn good. It's all on me, all my stupid decisions, I don't blame them at all. And everybody was like, you're so in denial. Yeah, maybe I was. I really don't think so. And I've worked with so many kids and their families for years, and I've just seen, the stories
Yeah.
of others, and God, and I'm like, man, mine was so sensitive and so messed up. How could if I'd have had a kind of a life like Coggins, right? Damn,
Yeah.
This brutal, abusive, beat him every day father. What the hell would I have been? I'd be dead decades ago. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to have that. Then a lot of other shit happened. So I've got had my share of
And you
my share of,
keep coming back, John. You keep facing that dark cave and going inside and finding more treasure, as it were.
And there's another book called Grit, which I really like, by Dr. Angela Duckworth.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes, she's a psychologist, and she comes at much more, Coggins' book is just his personal story, and it's so compelling, and just how he just pushed through barrier after barrier and fell on his face and kept coming back. And the lesson is, it never ends. You don't get to the point where you're on cruise control. It does get easier, right? When you develop the habit of working out and practicing and daily meditation and stuff. But I still have to tweak mine. I know you do that a lot too, Doug, when we talk about it. Now I need to get back into some of my subtle energy qigong work.
Yeah.
That was, we moved, and you kind of get upset, your thing. And I think I need to emphasize more yoga.
Yeah.
And they have great classes. And there's, or you have routines you can follow on, YouTube or something. Anyway, there's ways to practice, but I'm in a really ideal place to do it now. So I want to tweak my practice that way. And yeah, so anyway, Duckworth, she was a middle school. We used to say junior high. Did you go to middle school or junior high?
Oh, I was they called it junior high. Yeah, Ken Carroll
Okay,
Junior High.
right. That's showing your age, but it's a middle school now. And she's a middle school teacher, and what she began to observe was that it wasn't the smart kids that did really well. It was the kids that really worked hard
Yep.
to do well, and just having a bunch of natural talent and being really smart that you can kind of skate through was not indicative of success. It was the ones that had this kind of gritty
Yeah.
attitude. I got to work hard to get where I'm at, and that those are the ones that achieve really success in school.
That's true in everything from music to meditation to getting in the gym to
Yep.
succeeding in business to whatever it is, which is that hard work will outperform lazy talent every time.
Yes.
No
Yes.
no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what you're trying to do, it's getting in there and working hard and stick with it. You will eventually pass that barrier and get to that place. Yeah, and so that's we get back up and we keep trying, and you find that reason why it's worthwhile to keep trying, whether that comes from a place of spiritual connectedness with everything or a deeply personal worldly motivation or whatever it is in that moment,
Yeah.
something outside of yourself that is going to drive you in that moment to keep going until you get to
Yeah.
that.
And I'm always looking for people who are really exceptional exemplars in their field. And I was watching as a shooter, has won all these shooting competitions and everything. Said, "Do you want to shoot like me? It's not so hard. Just be the first one on the range, to get there, and the last one to leave."
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you shoot and you shoot and you shoot and you shoot. And I was invited to a concert in Salt Lake City, and a world class cellist, David Darling, was performing there. And there was a little kind of buffet event, wine and crackers or something before the concert started. And there was this little slight guy, and we started talking. It turned out to be David Darling, who I'd never heard of. So it's like when you meet famous people that you've never heard of, there's not any kind of, oh my God, it's like somebody that you've grown up with. I've had both experiences, and so I said, yeah, I'm a musician too, and I said, well, one of my obsessive ideas that I keep coming back to is practice. So, you still have to practice, and he got this look of like holy terror on his face, and oh yes,
Yep.
and then that just opened up a whole doorway. We just fell into it, and we just started discussing music and practice and life. And later on, somebody told me that helped organize a concert. And I made that he was talking about this guy he'd met at the reception, and because there was just this common ground of understanding about practice.
Yeah. And that's what we do every day. We show up and we keep going. John, before we sign off for today and say goodbye to those who are watching, I wanted to pose two questions for everybody out there who's watching this. And, please leave your response there in the comments. The first is, how are you going to challenge yourself today and in the coming week? And the second is, what's your why? What's inside you moving you to do it? So write your answers in the comments, and hopefully we'll get some good discussion going. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button and then the little bell if you want to get a notification next time John and I go live. And
Awesome.
yeah, thank you everybody for watching.
And practice, okay? Figure it out. Wherever you are, if you're an advanced practitioner, you've been doing it for years. Well, you might consider developing an integral practice: body, mind, emotions, shadow, trauma, and spiritual, and put those together. And then whatever other things you're working on, all that, the foundation that you're putting together by the integral work will make you just a much more realized and actualized human being who will be able to achieve greatness beyond anything that you thought you could do, by sticking with it and having courage and conquering your mind and the parts that say, no, you can't, oh, you don't have to, blah, 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 blah. get great, get courage, get